We'll now have a budget update. Dr. Swift, would you like to introduce this one?
Thank you, Madam President and trustees. We have every meeting pretty much since January tried to provide the latest of what we know about the Michigan state budget and about our own budget. We keep our eye on those numbers and on our timeline. Trustees, you do have the timeline. I believe Ms. Hilton will put that up here in a minute, but you have a copy in your packet, and it is posted on board docs as well. Trustees, you've probably heard, but I've asked Mr. Demetriou to address. We put one of many articles. Ms. Hilton tried to choose an article that was more informative, and this one has it packs a lot of punch regarding where the governor is in coordination with the legislative bodies around our state budget. And because we're hearing about that in the news on a regular basis, and trustees, because you have a legal obligation to pass a balanced budget by June 30th, regardless of what is going on across the state, we thought that Mr. Demetriou would just review our timeline. Trustee Gaynor is exactly right on. We discussed at Finance on Monday this idea of previewing and kind of seeing things ahead of time. So we want to be sure that our community knows our budget benchmark timelines as they're coming. And Mr. Demetriou, you're going to kind of walk us through that and perhaps shed a little light on what does a board do when the state has not made a decision on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swift, for that introduction. So we gave you the schedule before, and we will honor the schedule. So later this month, you'll be getting information on our assumptions and so forth. We have already presented what the governor has proposed. We expect next month to be going out to the community and giving them information on a sinking fund, on possible bond issue, and on a budget. So it's Dr. Swift and I will be going around the community and making presentations. We will definitely publish a hearing, and so people can come to the budget hearing, which we have to do by law, and then we will show our budget and go through the process of first briefing and second briefing and approvals and all those kind of things. So the governor has made her proposal, and part of one of her proposals is very controversial, and it has to do with the gas tax. And the House and the Senate are objecting to the gas tax, and the governor has said she will not. She wants to find that $2.5 billion to fix the roads. So so there's this not unexpected battle that's happening. How we're going to get a budget in. Because of this dynamic, it is a very high probability that we will not have a budget from the state by June 30. They're already talking about working through the summer and maybe even government shutdowns because the state has to have a budget by September 30th. October 1st starts the new fiscal year. So what happens when the state does not have a budget for us? We have a couple of requirements. One of them that we have to adopt a budget for next year by June 30th at the latest. So we will have to pass the budget without knowing what is going to come from the state. So we will have to make a variety of assumptions as far as funding from the state. We do have to have a balanced budget, which means we cannot have a negative fund balance, total fund balance. doesn't mean that we can't use some of our fund balance. We just can't go below zero. So that's one requirement. The second requirement is that if our fund balance goes below 5%, then that's when the state, it's called early warning, that they begin their intervention. So, if you go below 5%, then we will have to submit a lot of paperwork to the state, and we have to give them our assumptions, and they can accept them or reject them, and all those kind of things. So those are basically some of the requirements that we have. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Would you address the budget amendment coming in February?
Yes. We will pass a budget in June, and so if usually we don't know what our enrollment will be. There's a lot of things that happen. The past 10 years, we have known what the state is going to give us, but before that, there was many years that we didn't know until after July, or sometimes it was in October, and sometimes in the middle of the year, they come back and take money away from us. So, but usually after we receive, even though we have count day in October, it takes really until middle of October to firm that up, because there's a lot of ins and outs that have to be accounted for in a variety of ways. Usually in February, we will do a budget amendment. So there's a lot of things that happen, especially around grants, our enrollment. There's a lot of changes that take place. When we build the budget in June, we really start the work much earlier, and you don't know as much. So it's an estimate basically, and then we do an amendment in February to get it much closer to what is actually happening, and then we'll do another one in June to get it as close as possible.
So trustees, our goal was just to give you a heads up and kind of notice to the community that this appears to be a very unusual budget spring. Regardless, though, of that, we will need to stay on our schedule, and we will stay on our schedule. And Marios does his very best, Mr. Dimitriou, to anticipate what we're hearing. What's a little bit different this year is we're not hearing the legislative body's estimates, and normally we would be getting those. It doesn't mean they're not going to give them, they probably will, but we can just already feel it's going to be a little bit of a different year. And so we just kind of wanted to give a heads up to that. We will keep marching through our process. Trustees, I try to brief you regularly on the back of the house work to ensure that we're getting to a balanced budget for 2019-20. And of course, Madam President and trustees, Mr. Dimitriou is prepared for any questions you might have.